एकम अक्षरम हृदि निरंतरम भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम्। हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहम् अहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तत भावशुप्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः। ओहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्टात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। Namo Ramana. In this, the Thursday Satsangh from Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning. As usual, we'll be reading 2 verses from the work Guruvachaka Kovai by Muruganar Swamigal. Each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that shall be followed by a practice session of self-inquiry of 10 minutes duration. After these 2 segments are completed, there will be summing up remarks today by Venkatesh ji, and that shall be followed by the offering of Sri Ramanashtotram, the chanting by Vaibhav ji and Prarthana ma, and the floral offering by Manjunath ji from right here. So we begin the evening's satsang by taking up the first verse selected for us, verse number 427. This verse 427 is in the segment Investigation into Truth. We have already seen that after the prefatory verses, there are 3 segments in the book: Investigation into Truth, Meditation on the Truth, and Experience of the Truth. This 427 we find in Investigation into Truth, and the subsegment is only self-realization is true omniscience. Only self-realization is true omniscience. Omniscience, of course, means the ability to see or know everything. Omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence are said to be the nature of the Supreme. So omniscience is the knowledge of whatever is going to happen or whatever exists. So we go into the subsegment. The only self-realization is omniscience. Verse 427. An immaculate being consciousness is required as a support to be clung to only for that which is unreal and insentient. An immaculate being consciousness is required as a support to be clung to only for that which is unreal and insentient. The reason why we, who are pure being consciousness, seek another consciousness as support is because we suffer from the delusion that the mind, a defilement, is our self. So the next best instrument is taken by the verse, that from where the omniscience is possible, obviously the seeing is ruled out. Even with a telescope or with some instruments, the seeing still remains limited. Therefore, seeing with the senses is dropped at the beginning itself when omniscience is questioned. Even, let us say, a common noun like horse cannot be seen by the senses because all the horses cannot be brought here. Whereas in the mind, that horse stands for all the horses. That one common noun, the looking at that is the looking at of all the horses at one time. So where the omniscience can be falsely expected is in the mind. So that is what is being cleared by this verse, that the mind is a defilement. So don't look for omniscience there. And one step further is taken by the first line. Let alone mind. Even the being consciousness is required as a support. An immaculate being consciousness is required as a support to be clung to only for that which is unreal and insentient. So when the Ishvara is held as Irundolir, the existence consciousness, the shining of the I, the Spurana of the I, which is the life current. We have seen in the talks that Bhagavan recounts the story of Punya and Papa, where the 2 sons of a rishi, who along with his patni, he drops his body on a same day, on a given day, and Punya and Pavana are the 2 names. And the elder is counseling the younger one, who is grieved at the loss of the parents in the sensory world. And the counseling recounted by Bhagavan goes somewhat like this, that where are our father and mother? You feel they are gone somewhere. No, they are all present in our heart, within us, as the life current I. All this that you see, including ourselves, are only modifications of that life current. And being modifications, we are unreal. Whereas the life current being immaculate, immaculate is pure, absolutely clean. Since it is immaculate, it is not modified. And that immaculate spurana, I, is to be held by the sadhaka. And that is what is mentioned in the first line. That the first line doesn't even consider the mind as the possible omniscience giving instrument to be taken account of. It is saying that even that spurana is required only by a false ego. Only so far as the false ego is there, only so far as I am attached to the body, which has obviously led to the attachment to the parents, another body from which this body came forth, we say that is my parent. Whereas Bhagavan says, you are that spark of consciousness who is in constant touch with the Chinmayi, who is both the mother and father, the self. So getting back to that Chinmayi is to transcend the Bhavaroga and to understand that the apparent getting caught in Bhavaroga by our parents is not real. What is their nature? Their nature is also the Spurana, I, the life current that is running within each one of us. But even that holding of the life current, the holding is required only by a false jiva. An immaculate being consciousness is required as a support to be clung to. Only for that which is unreal and insentient. Only because we are attached to this body, we feel that we need a support to hold on to. But the reason why we, who are pure being consciousness, we are not even that which is shining, that which is having the energy of self-attention. This Purana, which is going on naturally inside each one of us, is a power. It's an energy of self-attention. But when you hold it and remain quiet, Bhagavan says that will take us to the self, which is not even that Shakti, which is not even that energy, which is the pure being consciousness. So since the reason why we, who are pure being consciousness, seek another consciousness as a support, why do we take that as support? Is because we suffer from the delusion that the mind, the defilement, is our self. Because we are feeling that the I thought, which is a mixture of the chit and the jada, since we identify with that, we need this Purana as support. If we don't identify with that and if we are remaining still, then even this support of the Shakti is not required, because we'll directly identify with the self itself, which is pure being consciousness, which is not even a power. Only if there is two, there is requirement of power. When there is no, even the desire to be self-attentive is not there in the self. Only being the self is there. This Purana contains in it the Shakti of a desire to be self-attentive. We have seen in other sessions that the self-attentiveness is even beyond the witnessing, is even beyond the witnessing of the Sakshi Bhava of what is happening in the world. The world is there of the rights and the wrongs and the karmas going on, but the Sakshi Bhava is of without the consciousness being freed of right and wrong, cause and effect, just witnessing what is going on. So in that also the Triputi, the witness, the act of witnessing and the witness is there. In the power of self-attention, who is the witness? Even that Triputi is gone. And Bhagavan in this verse is saying, even that support of the power of self-attention is not required. This Purana which is going on inside us is not required if we do not have the defilement, the attachment that is called as the mind, the I thought. The I thought, of course, being a mixture of Chit and Jada. So the idea is that once we are freed of the Jada element in the Chit, holding the Spurana. What the Spurana does, what does Gambiram say here? receive from Bhagavan as Upadesham, says that seek that which is arising in you as the I. There will rise an unbroken Spurana as I, which is continuously present. Hold that and be quiet. That will erase all the I am the body idea from you. And like fire which has lit camphor, that Spurana also will quieten down, having burnt all the attachment. And that is self-realization, says all the Shastras. Is the Upadesha received by Gambiram Seshayar from Bhagavan. So that support of Spurana is required only when we have attachment, only when we have the defilement called I am the thought, I am the body thought. So that I am the body thought is removed of all Jada content by the Spurana. And the Spurana too quietens down into the pure self. So that is told in an indirect way in the verse. Why at all do we need even a Spurana? Why do we need that Shakti which we have to hold and erase our I am the body idea? Only because we have this mistaken idea that we are a thought, and therefore we run after other thoughts. So when that process of running after other thought is dropped and we identify or hold this Purana burns all our the I am the body idea, and that Purana quietening down, that is omniscience. That is the subhead under which this is discussed. Omniscience is not knowing now this event is happening, next this event will happen, a million events will happen like this, all the events I can note down and know. We feel that is omniscience. That who is going to get to what post at some point of time, knowing that is omniscience, we feel that is hardly omniscience. Omniscience is only self-realization, says Bhagavan, because this whole scenario of seer, seeing, seen is false. It is the snake. The seer-seen division itself is a falsity. There is only one. The Atma, the self alone is there. That is discovered in self-attention. Knowing the self, realizing the self, being the self. This alone can be omniscience. Knowing the distinct events which are running to millions of events, that can hardly be omniscience, because that whole area arises out of self-ignorance, says Bhagavan. Therefore, not mistaking or not running after knowledge of what is going to happen tomorrow as a consequence of today's events, one should understand that this whole flow of events is nothing but the Atman. So, whenever the mind goes after thought, which makes one feel that there is something out there, the result of which is going to give me happiness, one should turn the mind inward by asking, for whom is this thought? The answer will come, this thought is for me. Then we have to hold the current that is underlying. Whether we can feel the current directly or not, we should have faith in Bhagavan, who says that there is the current underlying. Therefore, hold the I at least. And at one point, when the I erases its vasanas sufficiently, you will start feeling the current. Then hold on to the current directly. You don't need to wait for thoughts. Once you get the fragrance of the current, start holding the current of I. That will erase all the I am the body idea. And like fire that has lit camphor, that will also quieten down. That is mukti. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us practice this omniscience, this knowing of everything that the verse 427 is taking us to, that instead of knowing discrete events one by one through thought, we should inquire, for whom is this thought? To me, who am I? Let us practice that for 10 minutes. Revatma, you'll be able to set the time for us. Thank you. Namo Ramana. We go on to the reading of the second verse, verse number 575. This verse we find in the second segment, that is meditation on the truth. And the subsegment is dvandvas, pairs, and triputis, triads. Dvandvas, pairs, and triputis, triads. Verse number 575. The distinctive characteristic of the non-self that appears to shine is that it is the stage for bewildering duality. The distinctive characteristic of the non-self that appears to shine is that it is the stage for bewildering duality. This duality comprises concepts of the mind faculty, which is itself a deceit that has no permanence, does not exist in the self. So obviously the dualities also do not have real existence in the self, because the mind which gives rise to dualities is itself an absentee, a non-reality in the self. So we read the verse again. The distinctive characteristic of the non-self. So the self, non-self is a primary duality. If we take that, then the non-self, which is arising from these primary dualities, the distinctive characteristic of that, how do you know that? That suddenly multiplies as a huge number of, a bewildering number of dualities. And the confusion with duality is that when we will be thinking that there is a distinctness in dualities, that is good and bad is different from cause and effect, there will be no such thing. That why do you want to know cause before effect? Then that duality comes, that you are having good and bad in you. So the dualities itself divide into much more dualities. Known people, unknown people, family, non-family, our nation, non-nation, all these, the knowledge, the ignorance, all this rise as the obverse of each other. Sukha, dukkha, birth, death, all these are, if one arises, the other is there. If pleasure is there, if one gets a sensory pleasure, that immediately indicates that the opposite of the same nature, that is pain, also exists. That is the duality that is being referred to here. That is the distinctive nature of the non-self, which arises from the primary duality of forgetfulness of the self, is that it is made of a bewildering number of dualities. This duality comprising concepts of the mind faculty. How is this duality made? How is right and wrong arising? It is because the mind is having this division as right and wrong. Not that the dharma has no value. It's not like that. We will go into that a little bit. Which is itself a deceit and has no permanence and does not exist in the self. So the verse is driving home that whatever duality you see and you make judgments out of that, they are all arising out of the mind, which itself is a falsity in the self. Therefore, all the dualities are false. Self-attention alone is real, is the purport of this verse. But let us go into then why we are asked to do the right action, why we are asked to follow the law, why we are asked to follow the dharma. Then we get this understanding that So far as we have not crossed the dualities by sublimating them into the mind and mind sublimated into the self, so far as we have not done that, the holding of the right action gives us tapas, gives us the ability of penance. The right action builds penance, and when the time comes to look at the whole field of duality, one has the strength of tapas to give one look and let it go. But if one has been careless in practice in the area of dharma and casually behaved, and whenever it is convenient, you do dharma, you do the right action. When it is not so convenient and it is more pleasurable to do the error, you do the error. Then even if truth comes and stands in front of you, you will not have the tapasvic energy to understand and benefit from the truth. That maturity comes by practice of the dharma. So the right action, the ethics, the right seeing, all those steps have value because they purify the mind, they build the tapasvic energy. So when we come to Bhagavan's teachings in Ulladu Narpadu, that all these dvandvas and இரட்டைகள் முப்புடிகள் என்றும் ஒன்று பற்றி இருப்பவாம் ஒன்றேதென்று கருத்தினுள் கண்டால் கழலுமவை. Bhagavan says all these dyads and triads arise after the rising of one thing. He doesn't say which, whether it is ego or whether it is this purana, he doesn't say, he leaves it. So both are available. So if you hold this ego also, that is who am I. If you hold this purana, that is being still. So both practices are included in Ulladu Narpadu when he says ஒன்று பற்றி. That ஒன்று he doesn't define. But இரட்டைகள், all the dualities and the triads arise after the rising of this one. ஒன்றேதென்று, enquire into who am I alone, or enquire into what is the nature of this purana alone, then all the dualities and triads fall away, kadalum away, they just drop away along with the mind because they are unreal. The mind being the first I thought, you are inquiring into what is the mind, what is this purana. In that inquiry, all dualities and all triads, they fall away. And the self alone, the reality alone rises and shines, revealing that the dualities out of which you held the good for a long period of time and built the energy required to transcend that whole field, that whole division itself doesn't exist in the Atman. In the Atman, the whole of dualities and the mind itself, the first thought that arises as I in the body is called as the mind, that too vanishes as unreal in the self-attention, in the self-awareness, that is abidance in the self. Therefore, the distinctive characteristic of the non-self that appears to shine is that it is a stage of bewildering duality. The one who supposed to be a friend suddenly is not available at the time of need. The one whom you were thinking is a stranger is suddenly available at the time of need. All these things happen. The changes happen. The good turns into bad, and the bad strangely turns into good. What you were considering as something bad and afflicting you for 12 years, suddenly you realize if that had not been there, you wouldn't have had ekagrata. So you thank God for the trouble he had given for 12 years, so you didn't go away into many of the luxuries or entertainments or manoranjane, and you could stay in tapas. You end up thanking for something that you were holding as very bad for 12 years, 13 years, 15 years. And you thank Bhagavan, oh Bhagavan, you gave me that trouble, therefore my mind did not run away anywhere. So this world of dualities, the good becomes bad, bad becomes good, and it is bewildering, it is confusing. And from out of this confusion, how to come out? For whom is this duality? For whom is this good and bad if we hold? There is only one. This is for me, hold who am I? And at the appropriate time, the current will rise and shine as I hold that. Don't even wait for rising thought. Hold the current of I directly in Summa Iruttal. And that current, which is the real doer, which is the reality behind this whole thing, that too subsides into the self, says Bhagavan. With Bhagavan's immense grace, Let us cross this bewildering zone of dualities, in which itself Bhagavan has given us some tapas, some penance by holding on to the good. Now we are ready. We are ready to cross because the whole field of duality arises holding on to one, to me. Who am I? When we hold that, that takes us to the current. That current burns away all our I am the body idea and quietens itself into the self. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in practice of Atma Ucharam for 10 minutes. If thought arises, let it go and inquire who am I. If one is able to feel the spurana, hold the spurana and be quiet. Both are Atma Ucharam only. Let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Revatma, you can set the time for us. Namo Ramana. I request Venkatesh ji to give us the summing up remarks. Namo Ramana, sir. Ravitma is available. Okay, then we'll go ahead with the chanting. If he comes back, then we'll have the summing up. Otherwise, we will end with the Bharati. Vaibhavji, you are available?
Yes, sir.
Just give me a minute. Let me set this up for the Bharati. Just give me a minute.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. You can start.
नमो रमण भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः। ॐ गुरवे नमः। ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः। ॐ महौजसे नमः। ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः। ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः। ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः। ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः। ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः। ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः। ॐ सहायम्बा सहायवते नमः। ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः। ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः। ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ तीव्राय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषणे नमः। ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः। ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ उदासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूडिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजदजलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्यनिभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयाणवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलऋद्बोधस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चन्नसंशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मात्रमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मुनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ शान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसाराणवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणाद्रिशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ आर्धविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ दैवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्तानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनासेकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शनसुखमङ्गलमुख सकलजीवहितसम्मुख ब्रह्मसङ्गिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानन्दपुष्ट परममहर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठसमदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ. बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय.
ನಮೋ ರಮಣ ಅಕ್ಕ, ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.